First of all, thank you everybody for joining today's call, the webinar on AI needs clean data. And so we've also called it, slightly tongue-in-cheek, Trojan-Horsing operational hygiene into your AI budget. And I'll go into more details on why we came up with that name for the webinar a little bit later on. So an agenda for the call is, first of all, doing some introductions on the Fencore side, as well as our guest speakers as well. And then I want to set the scene a bit more in terms of Fencore itself. There might be some folks dialing in who don't know a ton about us yet, but also on the topic itself about AI, data, the importance of high quality data, and so on. And then going into the main part of the webinar, which is the guest speaker discussion. So asking our esteemed guests a few sort of pertinent questions to hopefully get some insightful points of view across there as well. And then a few minutes on the Fencore approach to AI and how we are looking to tackle the problems. And if there are any audience questions at the end, we'll be happy to answer those as well. So there is a chat function here in the webinar, so do feel free to pop in any questions you like as we go along. We're also running a couple of polls as well that I think have already kicked off with some questions about your personal experience with AI. So it'd be great if you wouldn't mind voting in those polls so that we get some statistics at the end that we can discuss a bit as well. Okay, so let's kick things off with the introductions. So I'll go first. So I'm James Crosby, the CEO and founder of Fencore. We're a cloud-native data management platform provider, and I'm originally from the UK and spent a lot of time with one of the incumbents in the data management space, who were originally called Cadis, and they went through a few different rebrandings. Market EDM was probably the name they were most known by, and I helped to build that platform for many years, and then switched to their professional services team when I moved to Singapore 10 years ago, and then decided there was a gap in the market for something even more modern, cloud native, and easy to configure, and that was really the inspiration behind starting Fencore, coming up to 7 years ago now. And I'll hand over to Thomas next. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourself, please.
Thank you, James. Thomas Eikrem, Managing Director for Fencore in EMEA, joined in 2023. Previously, I spent more than 2 decades as Head of Services for SimCorp, UK, Ireland, and Middle East, followed by many years in consulting for Pentagon and Citisoft. So like James, I come from a world of legacy solutions and complexity. And with Fencore, we are trying to solve complex problems in a more easy and user-centric way.
Great, thank you, Thomas. I just realized I had the slide there from this morning's edition. Apologies for that. So if I could hand over to you, Ruby, next to introduce yourself, please.
Well, thanks, James. Ruby Paramanathan. I am Head of Data Strategy at Columbia Threadneedle Investments. My background is very much asset management, data and digital transformation. So I've done a number of years buy side, a number of those years at M&G, where I actually crossed paths with Simon. So good to see you again, Simon. And the rest of the time I've worked consultancy side with asset managers, sort of looking how to transform their data estate. In my current role, very focused on strategic direction of where we take data, how we deliver value to the business, how we make their lives easier in terms of how they access data. Data quality is quite a hot topic, and I also look after data governance from an enterprise perspective. So working with our business leaders to look at how they can best look after, curate, and quality control their data.
Great, thank you, Ruby. And over to you, Simon, please.
Hi, my name's Simon Richardson. I was the head of performance, but I'm now a data product owner for performance and attribution. So effectively, my role constitutes exactly as what it did before here at Allianz Global Investors. Previously, and where I met Ruby was at M&G, and before that, I was at Blue Bay, which is a fixed income asset manager. And I've been in and around performance for the best part of 25 years now. So
Fantastic. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Ruby. All right, so moving on to a bit more about today's webinar. So AI needs clean data. To me, that sounds a little bit like water is wet to an extent, you know, in terms of how insightful that is. But it really is something that is not always taken into account. And people are sometimes trying to run before they can walk when it comes to AI projects. So what we really want to dive into is the fact that data quality has not been particularly cool or sexy or exciting in the past, and maybe that's why it wasn't able to always get the attention it needed from the C-suite and be prioritized above other things that were going on within the investment management firms. So, but now we do see that AI projects and you know, funding for AI projects is relatively speaking easier to come by right now, and so we feel that. Or we've heard from people in the industry that they feel that actually making data quality part of those initiatives or prerequisite is actually quite a good idea. And so obviously, you know, kind of tongue in cheek, calling it the Trojan-Horsing approach of actually making sure that data quality and data governance is part of that larger initiative. So who is Fencore? So we are a cloud-native data management platform fit for the year 2025. So there's a lot of our competitors who were, you know, roughly 20, 25, 30-year-old. It's an industry that's dominated by relatively old technology, but they still market themselves as cloud-native. And we're just sort of making the cheeky point that you can't sort of be cloud-native if you were born before the cloud. So in terms of our mission, so we really see ourselves as a platform that makes its data management or sophisticated data management easy and accessible across all asset classes, public and private, in order to build that future-proof cloud and AI-enabled data layer. So we have a team globally of partners and in-house experts at Fencore, partner consultancies that help our implementation projects. And a growing team in order to service our growing client base. I've already talked a bit about why we called it Trojan-Horsing, so I won't labor that point much more. But yeah, I think now we can go into the sort of real interesting part of the discussion with the guest speaker sort of Q&A section. All right, so the first question we have is, we've heard from a number of operations and data staff at investment management firms that data quality projects have struggled to get funding in the past. What strategies could folks out there employ to increase the chances of successfully securing funding? If I could ask you, Ruby, first, if that's okay.
Sure. So I think as a general point, I tend to sort of not frame it from the get-go about being data quality and data governance on its own. I think changing the narrative or shifting the narrative to be around what are the critical business processes that you're trying to affect and impact, because that's where a lot of your business will be feeling the pain, either because they're doing processes locally to get better quality data, or they're not trusting data that they're receiving, and they're putting some additional checks and processes around that to be comfortable before it goes out to regulators or clients. So focusing on, you know, those critical business processes, having someone in the business champion why they want to improve data quality and be that voice for you, I think is quite critical. To date, when we've talked about data quality, it's tended to be from a domain perspective or the producers of data rather than who's using the data. So where you can shift it to what are the pain points that you're observing that are being experienced by users that you're trying to solve for, I think can be quite helpful. The other thing I think is just reframing data quality as a topic. In my experience, I think the nature of asset managers and a lot of legacy that you might be carrying, a lot of what might be termed as data quality is actually reconciliation efforts or comparing data from one system to another, which isn't really kind of powerful data quality. That's just from my perspective, sort of hygiene, health around data. So shifting what data quality should and really will look like, I think would be helpful. And giving that focus on the value that it creates for users. So increasing confidence in data usage, driving people to the right authoritative sources of data because they now know that the quality is better and it's gone through more robust checks and governance and control.
Fantastic. I really like that point about reframing it in a different light, and hopefully, I imagine that can help to get the approval through if folks actually see the value in the data quality project. So, Simon, can I ask you the same question as well, please?
Sure. So I guess much the same as Ruby suggested, that if you change the narrative, I mean, for funding these days, if it says regulatory or it says AI, then generally you're likely to get that mini project or initiative or project funded. So that's generally a very good way to try and go. I think senior buy-in, so having a sponsor stakeholder, as Ruby said, is pretty essential. So having senior buy-in is pretty critical. People expect that data quality should be high and remain high, but I think if you're in the realms of actually dealing with the data, stewarding the data, owning the data, moving data around, you actually know how hard it is to maintain quality, how many checks you have in place. So I think the seniors will not necessarily see this, right? They're not going to see this. So sometimes using changing the narrative is probably a really good first approach, right? Thinking how you're going to frame it.
Yes, and do you feel the senior folks you're sort of mentioning, are they becoming a bit more data and tech savvy in this day and age, would you say? I mean, is it partly also getting a bit easier to get funding because they maybe know a little bit more about the value of data?
I think it's the value there. The word is value, right? So they don't necessarily, they're not hands-on. They're never going to be hands-on with this stuff. But if we can feed information, we can do things. We can provide Power BI reports so that they can look at data and drill into it. They start to realize that actually everyone could have access to this. And there are things we've touched on, behavioral finance style projects and initiatives as well, and that adds value, right? So that's the sort of stuff that gets us out of bed in the morning. That's what we want to get up and do. We don't necessarily want to sit there cleaning data. So having tools that support us and really provide controls, checks, and highlight things to us, or even flag and raise issues for us are pretty critical. So different ways of approaching that is important. I think if these seniors are getting feedback from our investment teams to say that they're getting good feedback from operations, middle office staff, and we're adding value to the investment process, then that's a good reward, right? They should continue to fund high quality data in the company.
Yes, that absolutely makes sense. So, all right, I'll move on to the next question now. What do you think are some key factors that drive the success of AI initiatives? I'll maybe start with you on this one, Thomas.
Absolutely. It's interesting because if we go back to the previous question, it is how to get funding on this one. And Simon's comment on as long as this is regulatory or if it's AI, and if you look at those things, they're really in the opposite side of the spectrum. Regulation is always a couple of years behind. AI is the next big thing, but probably doesn't have the maturity as you would expect in such a risk-averse environment as investment management technology. So I think that successful AI projects and initiatives that I've observed over the last few years basically combine and acknowledge the conservative nature of investment management industry, the focus on regulatory, the focus on investment accounting-centric operating models, but using AI to work with large data sets and clean data sets. But the fundamentals of asset management still needs to be in place. You need proper scope management, proper project management, educate the organization, having an AI and data-driven culture across the organization, and probably going back to data, look at how you best turn data into information and raw data into curated data. So that would be some of the factors that I see for the successful AI initiatives and programs that have been rolled out across the community over the last few years.
Thank you, Thomas. And Ruby, can I ask you the same question, please?
Sure. So I always start with the position the organisation is going to take in terms of what AI can do for them, and to what extent managers believe AI is really going to disrupt their business model more end to end. I think generally, all asset managers have got a myriad of use cases and proof of concepts underway. And I think that's worked very well to get the business excited. And also people that have, quite frankly, been doing certain processes day in, day out for years. It's good to introduce what could be possible, what AI can offer. I think you've got to be realistic for your organisation. Are you looking for it to really disrupt you? Because you don't want to be left behind by the competition, and have that kind of functional leader view on what AI can do for each of your functions. I tend to see AI falling into a few camps. There's either a productivity improvement that's expected off the back of it, or it's allowing you to make faster decisions or more precise decision making. The other thing I've observed is sometimes we can let sort of perfection put us off from just learning through usage. We think about all of the fringe cases that AI won't be able to solve, and sometimes that can stop you from getting started. So actually keep an open mind, start with it. It's a tool that, like anything, needs human assistance and needs learning to improve. So don't let perfection get in the way of actually making use of it. And finally, I also say we all work with lots of providers and vendors and third-party administrators, custodians who are all exploring AI. So it's a good opportunity to partner and understand how providers of your third-party services are using AI. That's always a good indicator. And also start with your own processes, sitting in data. I constantly say, how can we use AI in sort of key data management processes? How can we use it in technology and software lifecycle, etc.? So show where you're using it yourself. And I think that can be helpful to get others around the business more open about using it for their own processes.
Yes, you mentioned this productivity gains being one of the key factors that often drive the reason why somebody is actually starting one of these AI projects, or efficiency gains. That's something we heard on the earlier webinar edition as well. And I think tying it to something like that, where you can measure at the end whether it's actually achieved those productivity gains or efficiency gains, I think is quite important, because then there is that sort of famous statistic from MIT that's being bandied around everywhere at the moment, that 95% of AI projects are not delivering the business value that they promised, which is quite a stark statistic and quite worrying in a way. And I do wonder how many of those projects made sure that the data quality was high first. So it'd be interesting if half of those projects failed because of low data quality, for example. It'd be an interesting follow-up research that MIT should do. So I'll maybe suggest that to them. What about you, Simon? Can I get your thoughts on this question, please?
Absolutely. So I think I saw the MIT stats last week in The Economist, and we had another presentation by a well-known consultant internally here at Allianz, and they said 90% provide no added benefit. So, but I think back to Ruby's second comment, is it's around learning, I think, or training. So I think we may have projects or initiatives to do with AI. We may not benefit from them. You know, we may not have a measurable benefit from them, but I actually believe that we'll be learning as we go a little bit. And some of the consultants that we've seen present to us appear to be doing that as well. So they're kind of learning on the job. I'm not saying that's all consultants, but that's certainly from what we've seen. But I think as we're looking to build things in AI, we're learning and we're retraining AI, but we kind of need training first. So for some of us, it's a bit of a reset. So for me, I think about processes, about scaling it up, and that's not necessarily how we should think about AI. But as we start to build things as or using AI, using generative AI, or either large language models, or using it for sort of data quality controls and highlighting kind of outliers, I would say, then we'll probably find more use cases for AI. So I think we should all be having a go at this first and trying it. I think we'll probably realize that, as MIT suggests, we gain nothing in the first few attempts, but at least we're learning something as we go.
Definitely, yes. And I mean, I do also think, you know, like you mentioned, Ruby, that a lot of people are worried about getting left behind by the competition, and so that's kind of almost a bit of FOMO, isn't it? In a way, you could sort of phrase it as fear of missing out. That you're, you know, that's part of what creates a hype scenario, is that everybody's thinking, hey, everybody else is doing this really cool AI, we should be doing that as well. And so I think that's what drives this huge push towards AI right now. Is, and then there will be a lot of froth, because you're kind of just doing it, some of this stuff for learning experiences or trying things out, and so then it's not too surprising that a lot of the projects don't achieve a benefit. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't be done. It's still, like you say, kind of a good learning experience and sort of trial and error to see what ends up working. So that leads us on quite nicely to this next question. So there are a lot of rumors swirling around that we are in an AI bubble. And so there's two parts to this. So first of all, do you agree? And secondly, could there be some, you know, negative impact on investment managers if, for example, people within the AI value chain of vendors and players in that space, they suddenly have to find profitability sooner than they were planning to, and they have to raise their prices? Could that have a knock-on effect on investment managers? So maybe Simon, can I ask you this one first?
Yeah, sure. It appears to be a bubble, right? It appears to be a bubble, but quite frankly, I think AI is here to stay. I don't believe it's quite the same as the dot-com bubble as we saw before. Valuations appear high, sort of price earnings. The valuations of companies seem to be extremely high. We had a few market adjustments yesterday with Alphabet and Nvidia as well, where there was some investment coming in and some going out. So, and I think I saw some venture capital stats as well, that last year 41% of venture capital investment was on generative AI, and this year it's 60%, which was from Bloomberg. So yes, it appears that there's lots and lots of investment in it. I think it's just an enthusiasm, really, and I think it's not going to go away. I think we need to learn how to best use it. I think for large language models, it appears that people are using it regularly, right? So if you go onto a website, you have a chat bot in there, they'll be answering questions for you, they'll be pointing you in the right direction, or leading you to a member of sales staff, or giving you documentation that you need. Whereas for numbers, I think that's perhaps a little bit harder, where logic would say that it needs to be strictly very correct, and perhaps we need to do more work around the sort of controls and rigidity of AI, so there's less hallucination there. But I think for me, it's here to stay. I kind of like the enthusiasm about it, and I'd like to hope that we look back in a few years' time and we can't believe how we lived without it.
Yes, it's definitely changed things very rapidly over the past 6 to 12 months, that's for sure. Ruby, can I ask you this one next, please?
I think Simon's spot on. It's I think it's more enthusiasm. It's it's a transformative sort of tipping point rather than a bubble, because we've seen it does show real results. And I think people also forget AI is not brand new. It's just in the recent period, the speed at which the technology is developed has been unexpected, and therefore people have seen it coming or felt like it's coming faster at them than they expected, and probably not felt ready to actually think about how do we use it, how's it going to change what we do. So I completely agree with some of what Simon was saying there. In terms of charges on AI usage, I think there's a couple of things. I think it's going to come back to the kind of focus on active management and generating alpha, right? So in the passive space, it's an obvious driver for efficiency, lower fee-based products because you're using AI and demonstrating that. In the active space, that ability to demonstrate alpha off the back of use of AI in the investment space, I think there's going to be, more focus on that. So being able to attribute that back is going to be something that needs to be thought about. I think in terms of AI usage from a cost and value chain perspective, it's going to put more onus on us as asset managers to have a real handle on how the organisation is using data. That's a hard and difficult and complex topic, right? With the amount of data you bring in from external data providers, really knowing where that data is going and how it's being used in models, in large language models. I think there's going to be more focus, I expect, to be able to have a handle on that. So I think that's where I would see particularly big impact. And I think there's still a lot of scope within asset management to think about where AI could be used in client servicing to kind of really up your game there, and in the sort of sales scenarios and conversations, as well as some of the areas that might not be sort of front of mind, compliance, legal, etc. So I think there's still a lot more we can do with it. And it's not necessarily something that I think needs to be feared, where there might be a little bit of scaremongering going on.
Yes, I agree with you, and I liked your point about needing to get a handle on where data is used, and I think that also applies to where is AI used. And with some SaaS platforms out there, actually ourselves included, we're introducing AI features gradually, and it's the same across all. I'd say all modern systems. AI features are being introduced, and maybe investment managers aren't even always aware, because typically new versions are released kind of pretty quickly nowadays. And so then you might say, hey, we've got this new AI feature built in. So where AI is used within an investment manager might be sort of creeping in, not entirely clearly across the different vendor systems and the landscape. So that's quite an interesting thing. And I mean, I'd be interested to know if procurement teams are ever saying to new vendors, where do you use AI, and what would be the impact on you as a vendor if AI charges went up? And so maybe procurement teams also need to think about that and change their RFP questions a little bit as well. Thomas, I wanted to ask you this question as well, and get your thoughts.
Absolutely interesting, and I do agree what's previously had been said. I mean, I believe we are in a bubble, and that's not necessarily a bad thing in terms of innovation. We saw the same thing with the .com. Amazon share price dropped 90%. Fast forward more than a generation, Jeff Bezos is doing reasonably well. And if you look at the long-term predictions in terms of the internet, I think they've all come through. I fully agree with Simon. I think it is the same thing. I think there will be much needed corrections. I think the most interesting thing for me is that investment management technology evolution is still deeply conservative in terms of the core systems, whether that is a data management system in a traditional sense, your IBOR or your PMS, and they all date back 20 years. So how do you ensure to get the best out of established solutions in the market with a layer of AI to interact with them? So I believe we live in a world of interoperability and coexistence. We haven't cracked that one yet, but it's going to be interesting to see where the trends and the challenges and the opportunities will take us over the next few years.
Great, thank you, Thomas. Okay, so the next question is on different types of rules engines. So traditionally, all data quality checks were done with, I mean, we did mention AI has been around for a while, so it's not entirely true, but most of the data quality checks were done with rule-based deterministic engines where the same input is guaranteed to produce the same output. Whereas probabilistic is more about assigning a probability. So in that scenario with LLMs, for example, you could get a different output based from the same input. And so what should we use going ahead? Should we stick purely to deterministic? Should we go all in on AI and forget deterministic, which would be kind of, I guess, the AI hype approach? Or is there a future in combining the two approaches where it makes most sense? Ruby, can I ask you this one first, please?
Yeah, I think I see a place for both of them. I'm not sure I'd see us doing away completely with rule-based engines, certainly for a while. And also, if you think about some of the expectations with how you're using AI to be able to demonstrate confidence around results and why you've taken certain actions, I think not having any kind of rule-based backing behind things like data quality checks feels a bit unrealistic to me. I think where rule-based can be quite limiting, if you think about our sector, the complexity of asset management, when you think about nuances in asset class, fund structures, market volatility, there's so many factors at play. That's where AI engines, I think, can play a really good role because it can take into consideration a lot of different factors there. And then if you reverse kind of basic DQ back to what I talked about earlier, which is, things that are very much completeness, is my data in the format that I'd expect it to be in? That's very basic level checks that you'd expect to be fully automated. I actually call that data scrubbing versus data quality checking. And you can then start to use AI-based engines to increase the trust around your data and push your data quality conversation more into that space, because you're saying that it's analysed multiple data sets, it's looked at history, it's looked at trends over time, it's looked at market plays, etc., and it allows you to give something much richer in terms of a data quality assessment. So I think there's a place for both, and I think in particular this topic, that piece around human assistance and learning is really key, because applying that lens of knowing why certain portfolios behave in a certain way is going to be really critical.
Yes, thank you, Ruby. That's very insightful. And Simon, can I ask you this one next, please?
Yeah, my answer's not too different to Ruby's, really. I think it would be supplemental. And I always get ribbed for asking the question, speed or accuracy. And for us, for Ruby and I, it's always going to be accuracy. So you're always going to want that deterministic sort of rule-based logic in there that just, that says, is the value there? Yes. Has it changed by X amount %? Is it, is it correct? So that will just remain. I think for us, things like, will it check the quality of evaluation? Yes. Will it generate the valuation in AI? Probably not. It wouldn't be good enough. Right? It couldn't possibly be good enough to generate a high quality valuation all of the time. So it would be supplemental, I think.
Yeah, so it's a really interesting point there, whether AI could, I mean, right now, I don't think it could, but will it ever be able to do those things? And obviously, Sam Altman and the like are all aiming for artificial general intelligence, which is, intelligence as strong as a human or beyond. So let's say we got to that, I don't know, 5 years or whatever. But then there's still a question of, is using AGI going to be cheaper than using deterministic engines? Because if running those deterministic engines on a little, I don't know, 4 GB Linux server somewhere versus a gigantic data center needed to run the AGI, you might be like, well, actually, yes, AI can do it just as well. AI can also do it, but it costs me 100 times more to do the same thing. So there's also, in my eyes, the angle of what's it going to cost in the future to run the AI engines, and is it more affordable? Because if it costs more, then and of course, there's a lot that goes into that cost equation. It's the setting up of the rules. You'd have to calculate that as well. If, if there's a project to define all those rules in the deterministic engine versus AI, what would it need? It would need to understand the domain. It would need to have all the data and so on. So yeah. Anyway, some interesting. We'll probably have a separate webinar just on that specific topic, I think. Let me move on to the final question now. So this one is: innovation budgets are being given high priority right now. What are your thoughts on making data quality an integral part of them to help ensure their success? So this is kind of tying it back into the sort of the topic, or the title of our webinar. Whether it should really be important that data quality or data scrubbing or data reconciliation, all those different aspects should be made an integral part of it. So, Simon, can I ask you this one first, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think so. The suggestions before was that there's going to be costs coming from AI or increased costs. Market data is expensive for us. I think most companies, so probably Ruby's and mine included, have started using things like Databricks and Snowflake. So we're seeing costs accrued from the more we use it, the more costs are incurred. I think AI we have to take seriously to keep up with competition, I think, and the cost from that will come. I think it's being recognized that if we're going to keep up and if we want to keep scale, really, our businesses, so I think innovation projects need funding. They definitely need funding. We have a new generative AI team here, and they're creating the platforms that we need, really. So we have a kind of open source, but it's constrained within the company. We can set up agents. We can create little sort of tasks. We can do it in the safety of the company, and they can actually support us here as well. So I'd like to hope that we're keeping up at least, but I think most companies are realistic, and everyone reads the news. There's a buzz about AI. I think it needs to be part of our projects, really. The benefits, I guess, perhaps initially there's not going to be, as MIT say, there's not going to be real benefits maybe for the short or medium term. But I know in The Economist, again, this last week, they were suggesting that we will see material benefits from AI coming in 2026. So that's yet to be seen. But I actually think that if we don't have any kind of scale benefits from AI projects, if we come out of those projects with slightly higher data quality, better structures around data, if we have more controls and checks, I think that can only be a good thing. So there will be some benefits, even if there's nothing coming back from no actual scale benefits from the AI project itself.
All right, thank you, Simon. And over to you, please, Ruby.
Yeah, I think when I look at sort of innovation budgets, a lot of projects that have started or been underway often hit a bit of a ceiling in terms of how do you go from an initial idea that's maybe in a particular business area to actually scaling it to be something that's used on a more consistent basis. And I think a lot of projects get a lot of excitement, a lot of hype, and then they run out of road because some of the fundamentals around data quality that you need on volume of data or historical data sets just isn't there. And then that feels like too mammoth a task to kind of solve for. So I think thinking about that up front before you're spending time on a great idea or an innovation project will just mean that you've got more road for success to actually take that idea and scale it up into something that actually can be used by the business more on a firm-wide basis. If you look at AI, and if you think about core kind of data capabilities, everyone tends to agree that you come back to needing to fundamentally have a good level of data quality, but data quality at scale. I think most of us as asset managers have probably addressed data quality in some shape or form, because otherwise we wouldn't be running our businesses on poor quality data. We just wouldn't be existing. So the challenge we have is that systematic approach to data quality in a way that's scalable for large data sets. That's the kind of thorny piece to tackle. So I think being able to do that at scale, giving some thought to what that looks like, having intelligent monitors and signals in place. If you can demonstrate to the business what's your level of data quality today and what are you trying to improve through a project, and really articulate that. Often data quality is a bit of a sentiment that might be felt around the business. They might have had one bad experience with a data set and they've said, oh, that data quality is not poor, or that data quality over here is not trustworthy. It's often not in a measurable way. So I think if you can have some signaling, monitoring, measurability around data quality as a baseline, then you've got a much better chance in saying, actually, this is where we need to move it to for that particular innovation project or AI project to be successful. And then you've got something realistic that you can seek funding for.
Fantastic. Thank you both very much. That was really interesting. Come to the end of the questions there. So before we wrap up, I just want to briefly mention the Fencore approach as well. So we do feel, and I think that largely we were in agreement during the discussion, that relying on purely LLM is currently certainly insufficient, and the garbage in, garbage out paradigm definitely exists there with the hallucinations and so on. So yeah, the Fencore approach is to combine both rule-based deterministic engines together with probabilistic LLM-based data quality checks, agentic AI in the right places, deterministic rules. But crucially, what I saw on LinkedIn recently was you need to have somebody who was sort of advertising their AI-only product. They were saying, out with all the clunky rule-based engines, and in with the AI. And I agree with the word clunky. It should definitely not be clunky. It should be easy to configure, intuitive, easy to set up. You don't want to be spending, because like we were saying, the nuances of the data models in asset management are quite there's a lot of nuances, so you need something that's easy to set up, easy to configure, easy to maintain, so you're not locked into rigid data pipelines. So that's really the Fencore view of combining the two approaches in a smart way. In natural language querying of the data that's been brought in, agentic AI in the pipelines, as I mentioned. Explainability of the AI is crucial as well, being able to see what went into the AI, how it made its decisions. And a new beta feature is also to build data pipelines based on natural language input. So that's an exciting enhancement we're working on at the moment. We also have a 30-day free trial. If anybody on the call would like to kick the tires and see what we're all about, we'd be happy to discuss that possibility with you as well. I think we might have run out of time, unfortunately, to spend too much time on the audience questions, but we do have a couple of polls. So we had a poll on how satisfied are you with the state of data quality in your organization, and we actually had 50% of folks unsatisfied and significant improvement needed. So that's quite significant. Only a quarter of people very satisfied. Let me see the other poll we did. What do you think is the best approach to data quality? Oh, thankfully, 100% of people thinking that the combination of the two, of deterministic and probabilistic, is the right approach. So I'm very, very happy to see that. That's a relief. So Okay, well, thank you very much to Ruby and Simon. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to join us on the webinar today. And thank you to everybody who dialed in as well. And yeah, have a great rest of the day.